Nearly 7 out of every 10 Missourians die from chronic diseases. The prolonged illness and disability arising from these diseases result in a lesser quality of life for the majority of those afflicted. Joining us today on Newsmakers is Dr. Laura Roche, Dean of Kansas City University, Joplin, to talk about some of these costly chronic diseases and prevention methods that could save a life. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Roche.
Oh, that's my pleasure. Thank you so much
You're
for having
welcome.
me. Thank you.
So we know that doctors want to heal their patients, but most of their time is spent treating these people with their chronic conditions. Talk about the partnership that exists between doctor and patient and what these chronic diseases include.
Right. So primary care physicians, specifically family practice physicians, all physicians are actually trained in this, but primary care physicians focus on all aspects of your lifestyle in order to address your total health. And when you look at all the different causes of chronic disease, it's really important to partner with someone who has a knowledge base in each of the area of those disease in order to be able to not only recognize the condition and treat it, but perhaps to prevent that condition. And I think one of the best things you could do with your health ever in your life is to have a great primary care physician who you can sit down and you can partner with, and they can help educate you on the myriad of factors that can be associated with the causes of chronic diseases.
And so tell us, or I guess define, what are chronic diseases? What does that include?
Well, some of them that come to mind, some of the more common ones might be chronic obstructive lung disease, something you might see in someone who smoked for a period of time. And even though they might discontinue smoking, the damage to the lung might persist for many, many years, even longer. And in cases that can stabilize, but also sometimes it can get worse. So that would be an example of a chronic disease. Another one might be diabetes. That's another really super common disorder that exists in the United States, and it's associated with high blood sugar levels that are difficult to control. And the one type that people have are the insulin-dependent ones, where they require insulin for treatment and control the blood sugar. And the other type is the not insulin-dependent type that can be treated with medication, but it can also be treated with lifestyle.
Right. So let's just start there with diabetes. What is the typical cost for,
Yeah.
Isn't that just astronomical?
It's astronomical, and probably it puts the burden of healthcare due to diabetes is so great, particularly in the United States, but particularly in areas where people suffer from evidence of end organ damage. What I mean is diabetes is one of those disorders that gets into all the blood vessels and it's distributed all throughout your body. So it can affect your eyes and cause blindness. It can affect your nerves and cause what we call a diabetic neuropathy, and it can interfere with nerve function. So if you want to swallow or digest, could you imagine when you have to digest food, you have an autonomic nervous system that helps facilitate all the processes that go on with digesting food. And if it's malfunction, they have problems with stomach upset, nausea, constipation, vomiting. It's very painful. And then the other thing, that the other organ system that we look at that's really impacted is the kidney, right? The end organ changes that could happen and end up on dialysis because the kidney function is so limited due to the diabetes.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with that. My grandma had diabetes. She got it, the gestational diabetes, when she was pregnant.
Oh, okay.
But it went undiagnosed from, I think she thought maybe her first or second child, but they didn't find it till after her fifth. So, she went blind. She lost a few toes due to circulation problems. She ended up on dialysis. Like a myriad of things went wrong.
Yes.
And it was all from diabetes.
So people with a chronic condition like diabetes, and it is one of those things, some people are more genetically predisposed, obviously, to develop diabetes. Like I might gain 25 pounds and develop diabetes, and you might have to gain 100 pounds, right, in order for your blood sugars to be measured as abnormal. But one thing that we do know is a chronic condition like diabetes can persist for many years prior to the actual seeing the abnormal blood value.
Yeah, because people eat badly, they don't exercise, And, in doing some of this research for these topics, it strikes me like, what age is too early to start worrying about these kind of things? Like, is there
it
too
starts
early?
in utero.
Right.
I think, we all come, we do know that the health of the mother, right, and the genetic components that go along with development in utero are the first, they establish the foundation, right? And there's some genetic factors you can't eliminate, but we definitely know that there's an association between once you get out and you live, and your environment has a huge impact on your health. The chemicals in our environment, the toxins, the air, the quality of the air, the food that we consume, the relationships that we have, the emotional health. Emotions also play a factor in our health and causing chronic conditions as well, right? And for some people, chronic psychological stressors, for example, may manifest in someone developing chest pains or an anxiety disorder. So it does have an impact.
It's all one big system.
Yeah.
And so diabetes, you said it's a sugar level. Tell us, maybe for the layperson, what exactly diabetes is.
So diabetes is a condition where the body, when you eat food and it gets absorbed, it breaks down into blood sugar, glucose, right? And the sugar, the cells create, your pancreas secretes a protein called insulin, and it grabs onto that sugar and it goes, come on in the cell, and it tries to keep that sugar count low, because what happens is if the sugar's floating around in the bloodstream, it adheres to proteins in your body. It's not supposed to be out running around, running crazy, right? So if your body realizes, oh, the sugar's high, it produces more insulin. And then they believe that there's kind of a point where the body's overwhelmed. It cannot produce sufficient insulin to maybe bring all the blood sugar that's floating around the blood into the cells to be able to use, and then you have high blood sugars.
Okay. And so people that take insulin, do they take insulin to bring the sugar down or put the sugar up?
Right. It depends. Some people don't produce insulin. That's the type 1 diabetes that I talked about earlier, because there are disorders that attack the pancreas. There's other conditions that can cause chronic pancreatitis, can cause inflammation of the pancreas, can really interfere with production of insulin. So what the body has to do is it's a miracle that we were able to discover that insulin's required for lowering the blood sugar, and it saved people's lives, right? So once that we knew about that you could supplement it with the insulin you do. For the type 2 diabetic, there's a bunch of steps a doctor, when you partner with your doctor, they might go through prior to initiating the insulin. And one of the big factors, obviously, we do know is exercise and weight loss in your diet and your lifestyle. That is so big. And in the United States today, I think that is probably the #1 cause of the diabetes.
Yeah, I think I read we're America's ranked third in the world for the prevalence of diabetes, and they spend over $327 billion a year.
Yeah.
And that's needles, insulin, and insulin's expensive.
Right.
And I know there's a huge talk about, lowering insulin prices, but I've known people who've chosen, I got to pay my electric bill rather than buy my insulin.
Right. And in particularly for the people that don't produce insulin, that's troubling and that's very concerning. There are a bunch of things, though, that someone can do when they partner in conjunction with their doctor to be able to control their blood sugars, so that perhaps they don't even require the use of insulin. And I've seen that plenty of times in my practice. I've had patients where I've placed them on weight modification diet and expectation for them to exercise, and I'm a little neurotic. I would test their sugars earlier and try to get on top of them a little bit sooner, and say, if you continue to make these decisions, this is what's going to happen. And they believe me, most of them, because they saw the end result and didn't want that to happen. So we can definitely reverse those abnormal blood sugars and diabetes in individuals.
And another one you mentioned was chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD.
Yes.
What illnesses or diseases fall under that umbrella?
Well, in the United States, the #1 cause of chronic obstructive lung disease is cigarette smoke, cigarette use. And not only does cigarettes produce a bunch of toxins that can are linked with lung cancer. But it also, when you think about it, the toxins are not designed to be in constant exposure with young, healthy, viable cells. And when you inhale that, it goes into those cells and it causes damage to the cellular function of those tissues, and it can also do things that damage the DNA and the way the cells reproduce and the way they function, and it creates all kinds of problems. And the chronic lung disease, or essentially loss of viable pulmonary lung tissue, interferes with our ability to breathe and oxygenate our body, and I'm sure you've seen the symptoms, or people that do require supplemental oxygen because of those conditions.
And my mom died from lung cancer.
Oh, boy.
Because she smoked my whole life, and then beyond, when I moved out, obviously, she didn't stop smoking until the day of her diagnosis.
Wow.
And she died a few days shy of her 70th birthday. So I bet her at 50, my age-ish, I'm not going to tell my age exactly, she probably never thought she'd be dead in another 20 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't, as a child, have the choice whether or not to be around secondhand smoke.
Right.
So how can, I guess a lot of parents now, they smoke outside or roll their windows
right.
down.
I think that, and that's why it's important to partner with the physician. A smart pediatrician's going to sniff that out like anything, and they're going to be on top of it and write it and let the parents know that exposure to those kind of environmental conditions are so harmful to the development of a child and their young lung tissue. And I can say, just from my own practice experiences at counseling patients and counseling parents about exposures to those kinds of things, and really most parents want the best for their kids. They want to make sure, and so they didn't know they did. My mother smoked as well.
Yeah.
When she was pregnant with us. So
mine too. Yeah.
So they might have known. I think it was early in the 1960s when a lot of that information was known, but maybe not well publicized. Right.
Not as much as it is now.
Yeah.
And so with smoking and diabetes, then I guess a link is also obesity. That's another chronic condition. And obesity is one of those conditions that's linked with it impacts everything. Take, for example, something we hadn't mentioned was degenerative joint disease. Oh, yeah.
Arthritis, inflammation in your knees and your ankles and your hips. And when you walk, those are weight-bearing joints that can be impacted by additional overweight, not to mention the metabolic changes with the alterations in blood sugar, and also the general feeling of, and I know when I was pregnant, I gained about 60 pounds, and it was so painful to sit and to eat and to do so many things, because you just have this one space, and then extra weight sitting on top of it made it really even difficult to get out of a chair or to walk. And as you can imagine, that is an issue with obesity. You're more likely to fall. It's one of those things that impair every aspect of your life. Your pulmonary function can be altered by the overweight, your metabolic conditions overweight, and then of course, there are stigma against the being morbidly obese, and think of the emotional emotional overlay that goes along with that. And imagine if that starts in childhood. Oh, for sure. As well, and these conditions persist. We do know there are some forms of obesity that obviously are metabolic and need to be addressed, medically, but we do know that lifestyle is the number one factor that predisposes you toward that. So how do you have a conversation with somebody in your life who is overweight and, scary overweight? How do you tell them that you're worried for them, you're worried for their children, or you're worried for... Yeah. How do you do that? As a family member, you sometimes can't. Yeah. Because you'll create a rift, and I've learned that firsthand. You don't want to. I think I'm lucky in that I'm a doctor, so people come to me and they ask me, and then I'm able to say to them, well, here, have a seat. Let's sit down and let's talk about this, because I am worried about you. I am concerned about you. I've had patients' families where the husband would call about the wife, or the wife would call about the husband, or about the child, and go around the back door route to try to address it that way. But one of the things I think that's the most important is setting an example and being positive and affirming, right? It's kind of like when you see someone smoking and you want them to quit, or see someone not making good food choices. You be an example to them and you help facilitate them. But I found that, at least within my own relationships, that if you try to do that to someone that doesn't really want your advice, it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
It makes Christmas really hard.
I'm sure.
You don't do that. Yeah.
So as a doctor, do you ever feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall?
Oh, yeah, every day.
Yeah, like, come on, I told you last time.
I do.
You know.
I still subscribe to the motto, there are a significant percentage of people that really want to get better and they want help. And sometimes for some people it involves a great deal of support from their community, from their family, from their friends, being involved with a support group, just like you might perhaps with the grieving process or with any kind of goal you want to set, to surround yourself with like-minded people that support you, because it's challenging to go it alone. Have I seen people go it alone? Oh yeah, I've seen people just make up in their mind and this is what they're going to do and they're going to power through. But I think the important thing for people to realize is it's not a fault with their character or their nature. There's strong there's strong evidence to suggest that genetically our bodies are designed to retain and convert food into extra storage and to acquire additional weight because, of the way genetically we're made up. And for everyone it's different. And for some people it's more of a challenge, definitely.
Yeah, in the caveman days, you went out and hunted for your food and you were always active and fighting off predators. And now it's sort of like electronics and TV and...
We're very sedentary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so and also poverty. I know poverty contributes to a lot of obesity. Like it's maybe not causal, but it is certainly... I don't know. It's
difficult when you have food deserts where there's not availability of resources to be able to feed yourself healthy food and to make healthy food choices. And I've had patients that have worked in conjunction with their churches, their local churches, and that's been very helpful. Sometimes food pantries can offer healthier choices and meals, and there even in Chicago at least there were environments where the restaurants that had run off food would create food trays and distribute those throughout the city, and those were sort of avenues that we had you have available to them. I think it's definitely a challenge though if you don't have the financial resources to be able to provide fresh fruits and vegetables for yourself. It can be a challenge. I know we mentioned earlier one of the things about Aldi, and I don't want to but I know that the food prices, I was shocked at how much less expensive it is to shop there and to provide healthy whole foods that are natural in their natural state, and even organic selection at a fraction of the cost in some of the other stores. So
yeah, and as humans, we take the road, the easy road, and it's easier to buy a bag of chips and they taste awesome, but you shouldn't. You should instead buy apples or bananas. And it doesn't go as far. Right,
it doesn't go as far. I think it's really important that you realize I'm not anti-potato chip. I am not anti-ice cream bar.
No.
And I think that because we have to learn to live with them, and if you don't allow yourself the opportunity to perhaps taste or enjoy some of these foods, that it's just going to make you nuts and you're just going to go crazy wanting to eat them. So to find a nice balance, and
everything in moderation.
And I would say, okay, on Fridays I get chocolate cake. Okay, Friday's chocolate cake day. Not every day, not chocolate cake Monday through Sunday. It's Friday, and you enjoy it and chew it more slowly, and be a little bit more mindful when you enjoy. And I've gotten this way, if the cake is really, really good, it's worth going off of that. But if it's like okay, I don't want to. Like one of those gross cakes that you're like, what? What is this?
It's not
this
worth
isn't
the calories.
Grandma's homemade chocolate cake. This is awful. I won't eat it. Right? It's just like, okay, I'm not that hungry. I prefer to have something that might not taste as sweet and salty, like a fresh piece of fruit or something in lieu of that.
Yeah, I'm doing keto right now.
And, are you?
Yeah. And down like almost 19 pounds. But I've heard that keto also, because of the fat content, is sometimes not great.
Right.
But again, it probably depends on the person.
Right. Your own individual
Right.
metabolism. It's probably something you should be working with your doctor
For
in
sure,
tandem
and-
so that
yep,
they can
for
check
sure.
your liver and all your blood chemistries and make sure those
Yep.
values are good. But it can be a great way to help supplement as long as it's medically followed and controlled. It's certainly not a lifestyle choice that most people can live with
Sure.
their entire life.
Long time.
But good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm a bread, chips, potatoes. I mean, when I had my child, French fries were my food. Anything, potatoes, honestly.
Yeah.
I often joke, and I know this is going to sound weird, but I told my husband before, like, I would take a bath in mashed potatoes. Because I love mashed potatoes. But for people who can't, well, I guess anybody could. It's really difficult to limit your portion size. And
Well, when you're hungry, it is.
Yeah.
So that's why you want to choose foods, first of all, to make sure you're hydrated, because
Right.
that might be an appetite regulating issue that you need to pay attention to. Sometimes people will think they're hungry and when they're really thirsty.
Yeah.
So to make sure your hydration status is good.
I drink a gallon a day.
Wonderful. To
Almost.
keep the fluids, keep fluids going, and
Right.
have it be water or tea, unsweetened tea,
Sure.
but not to have it be sodas don't count. Okay, coffee once in a while, that's fine. but-
Frappuccinos don't count.
no, frappuccinos,
That's ice cream.
lattes, right. You
Right.
don't want that. The other thing is to choose, when you choose healthier foods that are in their natural state with more, they have a higher fiber content.
Right.
So fiber is
Makes you feel fuller.
part of our satiety, and also to make sure you're getting enough protein, right? Your meals should have some protein linked with it. And then also when you're getting enough of the rich vitamins and nutrients from that also serves to help with appetite regulation and control and satiety. If you like crunchy things, for example, I know you said you liked the chips and the salt. Well, apples are crunchy, celery's
Right.
crunchy, and sometimes you can
Make kale
trick yourself.
crunchy.
Right, you can trick yourself to into eating those sort of things. But don't put yourself in a situation, obviously, where you're starving and then the only food choice you have is the vending machine.
Oh, that's awful.
That's a recipe for disaster.
For sure. Because there's no protein in those vending machines. It is all carbs.
That's all, yeah.
And so one of the biggest probably chronic diseases is cancer. As I said, my mom died from lung cancer. My uncle just 2 days ago died from prostate cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry. to hear
Yeah,
that.
it's still
Oh.
fresh, and raw,
it is.
but
Oh.
cancer's a whole other monster. And some of it's lifestyle, some of it's genetics, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I with cancer, there are several lifestyle factors that, some people genetically obviously are predisposed, but we do know exposure in the environment can help serve to manifest the cancer genes and cause the issue. But we do know that things like smoking that we talked about, excess body weight, increased alcohol consumption, dermatologic cancers are the number one cancer, so exposure to UV light and history of sunburn, it can also facilitate that, your diet, cancer-causing pathogens, and physical inactivity. So we know like 5 things right now that we can do immediately in this present moment to help lower our risk. And add walking, if it's only 15 minutes 2 times a day, on most days, would be a wonderful way to prevent that. Making healthy food choices, working with your doctor to sort of move toward a more healthier lifestyle choices than being coached on that, quitting smoking.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't recommend it all at once.
That'd be a blow to the system.
That'd be hard, but to work toward it.
Yeah. Well, when I was in college, I was pretty thin back then, probably thinner than I should have been, but it didn't occur to me that I needed to be healthy then. Of course, that was a number of years ago.
16 or 17 years old, or 18.
And so how can we get it through to kids or younger adults that now is the time? There's never a too soon.
I think that the kids are much smarter now. They have access to much more information.
They do.
I'm very impressed by my younger patients and also my children within their own peer group. How they have access to more information. They realize the association between poor lifestyle choices and the outcomes, and they are perched to make some changes readily available. And they can appreciate even the psychological impact of
Right.
of states on their own health and serve to address that, and they're vocal about it, which is a lovely thing. They recognize, hey, this is, you said this and I don't feel right, so that's not acceptable, you know, and to not tolerate it. It's wonderful to see in the younger generation that they can do that, but there's the segment that think they're going to live to be 1,000 and
Right.
can do
They're
whatever,
invincible.
right, that their bodies will, you know, not do that. But
Drink as much as you want, eat as much as you want,
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, and the cost, I mean, for all of these chronic diseases, billions of dollars, the
Yes.
healthcare industry.
We and think about it, the whole having access to health care and the physicians, hospitalizations, it's hard enough to not, if you don't manage the chronic conditions, things will develop. Sometimes I know you have car accidents that happen and you fall, or you might fracture your hip and require medical attention. It's just compounded by other lifestyle choices that may be able to, you know, prevent or circumvent the end organ changes and the developments that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, because they're all linked. Obesity, diabetes, cancer, it all comes, not always, but you know, a majority of the time comes back to lifestyle changes.
Right. These are chronic conditions, and we do know that roughly half of the etiology associated with them are lifestyle choices. Yeah.
And starting in grade school, I know there's the Healthy Move or Get Moving programs that teach kids how to eat better and exercise.
Yeah, and I feel very strongly it isn't just you know the primary care physician's job to set an example for, but also for teachers
and parents
and for you as a public figure to set an example of what healthy choices are, because people look up to you know, for information and for commitment to that. So I feel very strongly, even though I would love to sit around and smoke and drink and eat cake all day. No, I'm kidding. Or not did I say that? But I, you know, choose to do that because I know that my job as a physician and is important to set that example. And so parents need to do it as well. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time to come out and talk to us. We love it when you come and visit.
Thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Laura Roche with Kansas City University Joplin. Medical questions and topics are always popular among our viewers, and KCU Joplin is a great partner with MSSU on Newsmakers. This is Newsmakers on KGCS TV from the Ruth Colpin Studios here at Missouri Southern State University, and I'm Moppy Pottruff. We'll see you again soon.